All right. Well, welcome to this week's Cloud Foundry TOC meeting. In terms of items on the agenda, we're going to review actions for the TOC from last week, take a look at outstanding PRs, especially new ones that have come in. I wanted to make sure we discussed final comment period motion for the RFC that I submitted last week. Looks like we've got Paul on the line. Paul, are you ready to give an update on the vulnerability management work group?
Yep.
Great. I'll add that to the agenda, and then we'll discuss any other business. All right, in terms of actions from last week, we had an action for you, David, to work with Greg on a couple of PRs, number 237 and 238.
Weren't those already resolved by the time we realized that they were fine by the end? Or do any of them still need? I can look at them while we're hanging out here on my computer to see if any of them still need action.
All right, sounds good. And then collectively, we were supposed to take a look at the new GitHub project for the TOC and think about how we'd like to use it. I know I didn't get a chance to do this. Did anyone else take a look at this?
I had a very short look, but not too deep. What I would wish for is, let's say, a panel where we see the PRs that are to be reviewed by the TOC, and that's it basically. And maybe new PRs that are the first time there, which need to be somehow assigned to a group. That could be helpful. Don't know how to achieve it, because that's the usual stuff where the 1 hour before the meeting, I go through this long list of PRs, usually just the upper half, and that's it.
Yeah, that totally makes sense. Okay, we can leave this on here, and hopefully we'll keep trying to take a look at that and figure out how it would be useful.
It would be nice to have like swim lanes, like Kanban style, and just like switch on like one field or something. So you can see things progressing from left to right. That's at least what some other working groups are using.
Right. Just taking a couple notes about that. All right, well, we'll leave this on here for next week. And then Lee had an action item to comment on PR 250, which was updating repos for the cf on K8s working group. Comment about making sure that automation is updated. Well, I think we've merged this, and we had a little bit of surprise with the automation because it recreated some of the repos. That's right. We renamed the repos, and then the automation recreated the old ones. We had to clear them out. So I think we've probably passed discussion on that. I'm going to mark that one as done.
Yeah, I mean, the problem that happened was like they were renamed, and then the automation file was not updated, and then I fixed the automation, and then we fixed it.
All right. Well, that is the action items from last week. Let me go ahead and take a look at new PRs that have come in. The first one chronologically is syncing the cloudfoundry.yml file with reality. This looks like something that's come out of the automation.
Yes, that's what keeps happening to succeeds.
Mm-hmm.
But also one issue that I'm seeing is currently we are exceeding the runtime. So it's like 3 or 4 hours to have GitHub actions to execute the job, and we're exceeding that, which is why it's failing. So I don't know if this diff is really everything there still needs to be addressed. I've tried to annotate, so let's ignore this file for now. Basically, it's a work in progress to get this to succeed. So my next step is to start adding a proxy. So there's a GitHub proxy as well, which allows you to cache responses, and it does do like a freshness check, which doesn't require or doesn't count as a request towards your token usage. So by caching those responses, we will be able to succeed within that time frame. It's just a question of like where to run the proxy. We need to run it somewhere. So ideally, we would keep it in GitHub Actions, maybe as a service, and then cache the results in with GitHub caching, GitHub Actions caching. But I haven't gotten that to work. So alternatively, we could run a proxy on some shared Cloud Foundry. That would be maybe a simpler solution. But I don't know if that would be something like that would be another shared critical piece of infrastructure that we have. So yeah, like by keeping it in GitHub Actions, ideally, like everybody can contribute. And if we start having like a private Cloud Foundry that someone needs access to, that would be a problem. I mean, I know that the website is also hosted on a Cloud Foundry, so there is an option to do that, but it's less ideal.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, let's not review that PR.
Okay, Ruben, do you want to close it out then?
It cannot be closed because it will be reopened. The automation keeps submitting it till it, like every time the automation fails, it will create a dump so that we know, like we can at least see the actual state of the world and what the automation is trying to sync, so that we can do like a diff and spot issues easier.
Mm-hmm.
So I've already rebased a few of the changes that were in there, like obvious things around branches, that like default branches that change. Like if people start changing settings in GitHub, that sometimes breaks the automation. And this is a way to easily spot that without having to like go through all those logs, because you can easily see the diff.
Right. Okay. So are you saying this PR should be long-lived to track those changes, or
I mean,
just create new PRs?
It updates the branch. It force pushes to the branch.
Oh, I see. Okay.
So it will be updated with the latest diff, basically. And once we get it green, we can close the PR and it should be gone. But since it's not green, this will stay here.
Okay. So we'll just keep this. We'll keep this around and ignore it.
Yeah.
Until we get the automation cleared up. Okay. Okay, well, the next one that we have is updating the app runtime platforms working group teams to match reality. I'll drop that into the chat. Let's see. Looks like there's is this actually implementing some of the working group? Oh, I see. So there's changes to the charter and then corresponding changes to the automation file.
Right, and this is the change to the automation file.
Okay. Right. Okay. So we should make sure to take a close look at this before the automation file diverges too much. Okay, but I think the TOC needs to sign off on certainly the repo changes that are in here.
I don't know if there's any repo changes. I mean, this is just putting what I think we approved the changes to the working group one. last
Oh,
time.
okay. Oh, is it just
Just
This is
one
just
minor
putting it into the automation.
record. One repository moves from Cloud Foundry Incubator to Cloud Foundry. That's all. So
Oh, okay.
I'm
Okay.
I'm fine, definitely, and I won't argue about any approvers, etc. I mean, that's something that the working group knows best.
Yeah,
for sure.
and I think it might also be adding the clock repository to one of the areas, but looking at the
right.
surrounding ones, that all looks consistent. I recall we made that on the Diego team a long time ago. Okay, so it sounds like we should just go ahead and merge this. Maybe we can do that out of band right after the call. I'll make a note that this is ready to merge. Urgent because of cf.yml changes. Okay. The next one we've got is 256. This is adding repos to the foundational infrastructure working group and reflecting incubator transfers. So Chris, I think this is one you submitted, right?
Yeah, I think it's pretty straightforward. This is just the adding the repositories that Ruben et al. Said that they should take from the orphan repositories spreadsheet. And then I, alphabetized it and did other minor things. But yeah, I think it's pretty straightforward. And then, sorry about that, but I started to edit the same branch on my fork. And so I added inadvertent commits, which I then deleted. But yeah, I think this should be good to go.
Okay, great. So yeah, we should all take a look at the list of repos on the TOC. Doesn't look to me at first glance like there's any problems.
Maybe someone else will some of those repos. I mean.
Right, yeah. Okay, great. I've tagged all the other TOC members.
And that repository list it's getting shorter. I just need to follow up with app runtime interfaces and CF on K8s groups, and then it should be nice and short. So thanks for everyone for the progress on that.
Great. All right, so moving on to the next one, there's an issue about just renaming the K8s secret repo to korifi-secrets. So the next step in renaming all of the current CF on K8s things. And I think we just need some TOC approval on this. Oh, and maybe approval from at least one of the working group leads. I think Giuseppe is back as well. So again, that's something we want to coordinate with the actual repo rename to prevent the automation from creating a replacement old repo with that name. And then the last new thing that's come in is related to this one. It's adding the korifi-ci and korifi-secrets repos to the CF on K8s working group scope. It's also reflecting the rename or the move of the Irene controller into the main Cloud Foundry org from the incubator. So again, that doesn't look controversial to me. I've already approved it, but we want to make sure to get the working group charter up to date. Okay, and then other PRs of note. I noticed that last time we had 240 on the list. I was taking a look at it. I couldn't remember what we had discussed about it last time. But I see that we haven't gotten any TOC review on it, so we probably need to take a look at that and make a decision about it. Right, I think some of the changes to the working group files were just syncing those with the actual project names so that the automation could use that as the source of truth.
Yes, that's correct.
Let me basically just Ruben's on my working group.
I'm sorry, Marcela, you were breaking up a little bit for me. What was that?
The changes to the working groups. I think it's just to foundational infrastructure and service management, because we were pairing with Ruben, so it's just trying out for our working groups.
Great. Makes sense. Okay, so TOC should definitely take a look at that soon and get it signed off on. Okay, well, unless there's any other outstanding PRs that people wanted to raise, I think we can move on to other topics.
I have 2 pending approval. It's just adding some working agreements for service management. It's 224 and 223 that I cannot merge if I don't get approval.
Oh, okay, great.
Starkwind is moving forward with the looking at Stratos. We had some more meetings with upper management, and hopefully in the next week or so, we should have an answer back for you.
Oh, great. Okay. Thanks for the update, Norm. I'm just making a note about that under any other business. Okay. Well, before we get an update from Paul on the vulnerability management working group, I just wanted to also request the rest of the TOC to approve the final comment period motion for the ROC I submitted last week. So we could vote here or vote async on GitHub on the by reacting to or commenting on the PR itself.
I gave a thumbs up in
oh, great.
GitHub, and I'm just not seeing add review button for the PRs that Marcela was just mentioning. I'll figure it out anyway.
Sounds good. All right. Well, without further ado, Paul, do you want to give us an update on the vulnerability management work group?
Yeah, great. Thanks, Eric. Do you mind if I share my screen?
Oh, go ahead.
Few short slides. See this one? All right. Hi, everyone. For those that don't know me, my name is Paul Warren. I am the lead of the security vulnerability working group. You can see the slide deck, right? Yep. Okay, great. So I just have a very short presentation by way of an introduction and an update. So shouldn't take too long. Here we go. So yeah, so who are we? So I'm Paul, as I said, the lead of the working group. I'm from VMware. On the working group is also Monty and Kushbu, also from VMware. Matthias from SAP and Pratik from Fidelity. A while back, we tried to open the working group up to a wider set of members. Prior to that, had been pretty much run by Pivotal stroke VMware. So we tried to get more involvement from those in the community, and we're always open to more members if you wish to come along and give it a try. We tend to kind of float in the shadows a little bit, I think, because just of the nature of what we do. Everything's locked down, so you can't see it, and so on and so forth. But if you are interested, then we would love to increase the membership and the representation across more of the members' organizations that participate in Cloud Foundry. But these are our current set. So what do? We provide a single point of contact for security vulnerability reporting and management. We provide management of security vulnerability reports through to resolution. So when they first come in, all the way through to resolution, and sometimes that can take a while. We also manage Ubuntu security notices through into Stem Cells and Cloud Foundry, and I can talk a little bit about that as we go through. You may see these published on the CF blog or in the #security channel on Cloud Foundry. And we do some amount of pre-disclosure, disclosure information dissemination from projects that we're interested in general. They come into us, and then we kind of disseminate that information out to various interested working parties. So what does that actually mean? Well, it means this. When I first joined the group, we kind of had a mapping exercise where we kind of flow charted out what we actually do. And so that kind of breaks down into several stages. We have kind of on all Cloud Foundry projects, if you go look at the security MD, you'll see the security, if you find any vulnerabilities, please report them to security@cloudfoundry.org. So someone manages that inbox, and that's us. And so we get emails into there. And then for the vulnerabilities, we kind of triage those, but for the things that look like they're potential vulnerabilities, then we'll start a private sec dash channel that many of you may have been invited to over the course of your tenure on Cloud Foundry. And that's really the crux of it. We use that to manage the vulnerability through to resolution. Sometimes the reporters are also invited to those channels, sometimes not, depending on whether they're on Cloud Foundry or not. And that may sound like a bit strange, like why wouldn't it be on cloudfoundry.org? But I'll come on to some of the reasons why that might be in a minute. It's our job to negotiate suitable embargo periods with reporters. So sometimes reporters want to go public with issues, but we need to keep them private to give us time to fix them and give us time to pre-disclose them to all of the kind of distributions of Cloud Foundry that are out there. To date, we've never had to do this though, but it would be our responsibility to do it should that arise. We assign CVE numbers. So when a fix comes through, we create the sec dash channel, we invite a bunch of people to it. We help shuttle that along, but ultimately it's up to the component teams to kind of deny or verify that is a true vulnerability. In such cases, we will assign that a CVE number, and that is assigned out of a proprietary system called Davos, where we go to MITRE and we get a block of CVE numbers, and they're kind of loaded into this Davos system, and then they're kind of handed out one by one for each vulnerability. And then, of course, that CVE number will be part of the pre-disclosure and public disclosure later on, and then will also be registered back with MITRE with the description of the bug and the versions it affects and so on and so forth. We're responsible for doing pre-disclosures. So for high and critical issues, we will often pre-disclose them to all of the Cloud Foundry distributions out there once a fix is available, to give our downstream distributions an opportunity to fix that issue before it actually goes public. So on the day that it does go public, everyone, all of the downstream distributions can say, yeah, we fix this, we fix this, we fix this. And then lastly, obviously, we will do a public disclosure of that, which will be a blog on the CF blog, a blog post on the CF blog, updating everyone, and then that actually gets replayed out on various other channels too. So that's basically what we do. What sort of things are we seeing on our day-to-day basis? Well, we see a whole range of things. So we see a whole bunch of fake issues, as you can imagine. So these are silly things like, the spammers have got hold of security@cloudfoundry.org and they spam us. So, it gets caught by the spam filters sometimes not. We often see overly eager hackers who go trawling on cloudfoundry.org, for example, and they'll think they'll find things on there which shouldn't be on there. So recently we had one where they found like a zip file and they said, oh, there's a compressed zip backup of something. This is leaking information. I found this. Please reward me, kind of thing, right? Then they go investigate a little bit. Turn out that this asset is just part of the Cloud Foundry certification training, and it's a part of a training asset. So it obviously this is not a vulnerability, but those are the kind of things that we get into the inbox. We also get a whole bunch of real issues. So recently, you will know about log4j shell, which affected our Java components. Obviously, Nginx LDAP came in as well. That one, those two, I mentioned those specifically because they come in kind of hot. Those ones, there's lots of buzz around those ones, lots of attention on them to get them addressed. And that attention kind of filters down from the downstream components and kind of filters back up to us. Now the Nginx LDAP one turned out to be Cloud Foundry wasn't affected, but nonetheless, sometimes these issues come in and there is a lot of attention on them. We have at the moment we are, well, I would say this one is the next one is quite interesting. We have seen like an uptick in the number of issues that we're managing that are really to do with a couple of things. One is either out-of-date dependencies on the component repos, or the other one is kind of like vulnerabilities, or I would say potential vulnerabilities that are found with SAST type source code scanning. And I think what's happening here is that users of Cloud Foundry are applying these more modern tools that perhaps weren't available, when we started Cloud Foundry back in the day, or as mature anyway. And they're running them on our source code. So things like Sift and Gripe and SonarQube and all of the alternatives of those tools. And they're finding all of these issues. So they're finding vulnerabilities in the dependencies that are already fixed, but the component was released with an out-of-date dependency, so the vulnerability is already there, still there, potentially. Or like I said, they're finding potential vulnerabilities in the source code with the SAST kind of scans. And we're managing those ones through as best we can. These ones are a little tricky to manage because often because we kind of like go down to we'll start a private sec-dash channel for these things, and we'll invite the component team to it. And by the way, the working group member lists that we have are vital for us in inviting a set of people that selecting who we need to invite to those sec-dash channels. And the component team saying something along the lines of, well, we don't run these scans, and we're quite busy to fix them, and especially with the SAST ones too. In my experience, very often those things are false positives, but it takes the component team a lot of time to kind of process. So this is an interesting area for me, and one that we may want to kind of poke at and talk about a little bit, because I think, like I said, the users of Cloud Foundry, all the source code is out there, so they're running these scans against these things, but I don't know how holistically we're doing that on Cloud Foundry and ourselves. So that might be something we want to talk about moving forward. So that's an interesting set of issues we're getting at the moment. And then the last one there is, this is another interesting one. Sometimes we even get issues outside of the GitHub components themselves. So we had a hacker find a bunch of, three issues on the cloudfoundry.org website recently, which were kind of like spam type attacks. And they'd also spotted that there's a clever DNS record you can put in place now to help stop nefarious actors getting hold of your domain or subdomains on your domain, which we were missing. But we're the central point, so these things come in, and generally speaking, I think we'll have an attempt to manage anything, even if it's not directly to do with source code we've written as part of Cloud Foundry. So that's the kind of things we're seeing. I just wanted to also draw all of your attention to an integral part of what we do. I've mentioned it a couple of times. The working group is reliant on a proprietary system called Davos, which I think the foundation gets a lot of value out of, but it's kind of an unsung hero in many respects. So this was a proprietary tool that was kind of born out of Pivotal originally. I think that my ancestors on the working group had spotted a need here and kind of pulled together this Davos system, and I forget what Davos stands for, but it has a related name. And this is the tool that does a couple of things for us. It's used, like I said earlier, to manage our CVE numbers. So we get a block of numbers from MITRE and they get loaded into Davos. And then for each verified CVE, we'll assign a number out of that block from Davos. But it also automatically tracks all of the Ubuntu security notices that come out, and they issue a lot. And it tracks the issues that are therein into our stem cells. So it kind of says, okay, I know that there's a Ubuntu security vulnerability here. I know it's fixed. I'll go find the stem cell that applies to, and then I'll go find the Cloud Foundry deployment that's using those stem cells. And so we're tracking the USNs through all the way into Cloud Foundry. And on the back of that, once we've tracked the fixes through, we will publish notices on the Cloud Foundry blog post, and then those automatically get replayed out onto the hashtag security channel. When new versions of Ubuntu come along, if we want to pick those up as stem cells, there is engineering work behind the scenes to adopt that new stem cell. So I forget exactly which one. I think it was when we switched over to Bionic. There was work that had to go on in Davos to update it so that it knew how to track the Bionic Ubuntu stem cells. So I think this is just an area of Davos that perhaps wasn't the team at the time weren't able to get to and kind of wrap up. You would have thought this could be like a configured via the UI. You have some list of the IDs or something, and then it would just track them. It doesn't work that way at the moment. And so there's engineering work. And the reason I mentioned that is because there was engineering work and it took a while to get the engineering work done. There was a period of time when we stopped publishing our version of the USNs out onto the CF blog and the hashtag security channel, and users of Cloud Foundry definitely let us know at that time that this was a missing piece. This had stopped happening, and they would like it to continue happening as soon as possible, please. So I know that is, from a user's perspective, an important part of what we do. So hence mentioning to you all the existence of this system, it provides value to the Cloud Foundry community, and it's an important part. I think it's a little bit of an unsung hero. So a note on that. And that's pretty much it by way of an introduction and update. What we do is fairly simple. We have a playbook that we run for every single issue that comes in. We treat everything pretty much the same. So 9 times out of 10, it ends up in a private sec-dash channel, and we try and manage it there. So if in the future you get invited to one of these things, you know what it is. It's nothing too scary. It's just a private channel. Sometimes the reporter's there, and we use those channels to manage the issues through the resolution as best we can, and make sure they keep rolling. All right. That's it. I'm happy to answer any questions if anyone has any. But that's the update. Thanks for listening.
With the recent release of the Jammy beta release, does that mean that we probably need to do some work on that?
Yes, we will. Yes. When is that?
This week. So this week it was cut. We have a beta release now, which means that because last week there was a GA from Canonical. So we went from an alpha to a beta, and then we keep it in beta till we know that all the upstream components work with a Jammy release or Jammy stem cell. So
at the moment it's an experimental ops file or something like that, is it?
I don't know if we are there yet.
Okay.
I don't think we just have the beta stem cell, which is like just released this week. But that's the target. Like everybody should start testing that stem cell now.
I see.
And it would be nice to start tracking maybe USNs. I think currently there are none, but once they start publishing USNs for Jammy.
Yep. Thanks for the update. That's useful. Thank you.
I've got a question or request for opinions more to the rest of the TOC than that, having seen this presentation and some interesting aspects. Thanks for that, Paul, which is about Paketo not really participating in this working group, but I would be interested to get pre-disclosures or get the ability for pre-disclosures and participating in there. And I'd be interested to hear other opinions on that. I think the Paketo working group is looking into establishing their own copy of that process, but I really like the process. I like pre-disclosures. I like the through routing, so to say, of Ubuntu vulnerability or security updates and this kind of thing. So I would like to see the Paketo working group pretty much establishing a copy of that process, where it's again a question of should we go for a copy. Paketo is handled a bit specially in all kinds of aspects, but this one is, from my perspective, a severe one when we talk about consumption of cloud native build packs.
Yeah, the only update I have there is that I believe at least the way you phrase it at the end is correct. Yeah, they are establishing an exact copy of what we're doing there or thereabouts. So, hopefully there will be, a central point of contact that everyone can report their potential vulnerabilities to, and they'll be managed in a similar way.
Okay. So I'll probably approach the Paketo working group themselves again in terms of how to participate there, because that's, I guess, participating in their copy of the process is the way to get pre-disclosures. And as a consumer of Paketo build packs, I'm very interested in if it wouldn't even be blocking us consuming those if we can't get into this process. As we are, right? Matthias Essenpreis is part of the vulnerability working group, which is our anchor inside of this process there. Okay.
Paul, do you have a feed from the other build packs too? Like last I looked, it seemed like Davos was only really harvesting USNs, and I was like, okay, there's a USN pass-through that is valuable, but it's making us feel like we know all the CVEs when we're not scanning the build packs of the root file system. Is that true? Or do we get it? What sort of feeds are we able to capture automatically?
Just the USNs. You are correct there, David. Yeah.
Do we correlate the Bionic CF Linux FS3 product to the USNs, or is it just the
Oh,
stem
yes.
cell?
No, you're right. It's the stem cell and the base operating system for the apps. Yeah.
Okay. So that's a lot of it, but then there's all those build pack dependencies, right? I'm like vendoring in like 50 versions of Java and Ruby and Tomcat and all of that. That's the like stuff that.
And actually, there is an issue with build packs. We will very soon open some tickets here when it comes to dependencies. For instance, there are old JRuby runtimes inside, and we wonder why. It all comes up with the security scanning.
Exactly. Once you start turning a scanner loose, and we've been doing this too on these various Bosch releases, you discover interesting things. And some of this is not solvable. It's just like JQ has a, libgc whatever that has never been patched. There's no new version that you can switch to. It's like, you're never going to get those out of your scanner. Like Apache Skywalk has vulnerable dependencies and it's in a bunch of build packs. It's a vendor thing, like it's a third-party agent, and the third party has kind of ceased to maintain it. So there's going to be some difficult decisions about which one of these magical integrations that we have in our build packs are we going to continue to keep, and which ones are we going to pull out because the vendors aren't keeping up. But it's a breaking change for sure, right?
Yeah.
So there's a lot of fun stuff there.
There's some fun stuff in terms of assessments, and where like I just have like some shallow view on that right now. But if you look at, for example, Bionic as it comes from Canonical, you'll find vulnerabilities that are scored 9.8. They are still scored like that. It's like Ubuntu pages are only showing that base score, and their assessment why they mark it as prior low is basically we can't fix it in a compatible way. Like there's no mention of, and we consider it not to be dangerous. It's just saying we can't fix it for Bionic because it's incompatible. And the base score stays with 9.8, and it's part of probably also Bionic stem cells because it's part of the Bionic image there. So fun things.
I triaged one of those last week. It was korifi-YAML, and I was like, oh yeah. And they were like, Ubuntu was like, this is a design decision. Like we can't, like you have to massively switch the version, right? And that's a huge change, and it's a breaking change. And when you do LTS, like sometimes you are stuck on a version where you cannot fix it, right?
One thing that I'm trying to push on the Paketo side, but maybe with the upcoming, like actually doing some security scans and looking closer at these things coming in, maybe it's something to consider as well for the Bosch-based CF deployment side. I try to push the Paketo community to actually adopt LTSs earlier, so more often, which seems to be a costly change on the Bosch side, right? The decision of skipping one LTS is like inherited, I guess, from the CF side into Paketo. I'm trying to convince people that we should actually just take every LTS, but it could be interesting for CF on Bosch as well, although it might be costly. Hard to judge from my side because I don't really know the cost of switching stem cells. It comes with a hugely reduced amount of CVEs. Like I mean, it comes with a caveat from my perspective, right? Like I mean, we scanned the Jammy jellyfish thing, and unsurprisingly, there are 0 vulnerabilities found. But I'm pretty sure they have more 0 days still baked in than Bionic has, right? Probably most of Bionic's 0 days and very dangerous vulnerabilities have been found in the past 4 years, in contrast to very recent releases. So there's probably a balance to find. But skipping an LTS, anyway.
All right. Any other comments or questions for Paul while we're on the topic of vulnerability management? Paul, in general, are there other places where you feel like you can be using more support or resources from the TOC that we haven't touched on already?
No, I think we're good. In general, the number of CVs we get in is quite manageable at the moment. It's fairly light. And when we get a hot one like the log4j shell or log4shell, whatever it's called, we always get a good response from all of the component teams. Always very supportive. They hop right on and manage it as best we can. So we I think as a working group feel very well supported. I would ask that I think the one area was the one I highlighted, which was if we had standard scans and implemented them somehow, then I think those set of issues would be easier to manage, because we could just turn around and say, well, these are the scanners we use, and we keep and then the bars we hold before we release for those, whatever that might be. I think that would help manage those a little easier. Those ones are a little tricky to manage at the moment because we can't rebuff them with anything. The user comes with a scan and we're like, yeah, great. You've got a scan and you've found some results. And it's often difficult for the component team to handle those ones because they then have to work that in to their schedules. And in my experience anyway, the SAST ones are very often false positives too. But it takes time to process it. So I think those ones are tricky. So that would be something I'd ask the group to poke at a little bit.
Sure. Those are the things like SonarQube that you mentioned?
Yeah. Like I don't think within the Cloud Foundry, we don't ask our component teams to run those scans, any of those scan tools, right? As I understand it, and therefore, but our users are increasingly running those. It's a standard part of software delivery lifecycle now to run those scans. So I would imagine that these are going to continue to trend up, and so some sort of position as a foundation on how we handle these would be great.
Would it make sense to make an RFC or something from the security working group towards with some recommendations about which scanners to run?
I can certainly look into doing that. Yeah. If you think
I think that's indeed a very relevant piece of the information. Like you mentioned SonarQube specifically, probably based on lots of those requests coming in were these scan results, because the results might be vastly different. And like having ruled out the false positives from one tool doesn't necessarily help with ruling out the false positives from another tool.
That's exactly right.
That might be different for those dependency scanning tools, because maybe the match is higher, right? The false positives are probably, it's just not the version that we really use and these kind of things. So maybe that's easier. But for this last part, I guess it's very important to get preferred tools, depending maybe on actually like reports dropping into the security mailbox.
Yeah, I can definitely take a look at putting together an RFC for that if you all would be. I think that would be useful. The problem
we have a place for a discussion as well, right?
Yeah. Okay. Yeah, sure. I'll take that as nice.
Hey, Chris, does the Linux Foundation have anything to support us? Like, there's two things that I think of that we need in this area, and I'm wondering if the Linux Foundation has either. The first is some expensive scanning software. Like we can always use the free stuff too, but if you have licenses to various scanners, that would be good to know that those are options that are essentially free to us. And then secondly, what about, where do we track this stuff, right? Davos is okay. One of the major problems with Davos is there's nowhere to put any human input, right? When we triage a thing and we're like, oh yeah, we're not affected by this CVE number, even though the scans are showing it, because we don't use that library in that way or whatever, right? Some nuanced. I keep track of all this stuff for the products that I work on, a lot in my head, and it's really not good. So is there a place where we can track the CVEs reported and found in the open source, and ideally a place where we can track triaging results so that when new ones come in, we don't ever have to do that work again?
Right. I'm not sure. I can look into both these things and get back to y'all like next week or the week after. Yeah, I mean, we did it on. There's the new LFX security, but I'm not sure to what extent that helps with those aspects. Let me dig into that.
All right. Any other points or comments we want to make about this topic? All right. Well, thank you again, Paul. That was great. Great to hear all the work that the working group has been doing and how we can support you.
Yeah, my pleasure. Thanks very much for listening.
All right. Are there any other topics that we want to raise before the end of the session today? All right. Well, it sounds like we can adjourn for this week. Thank you, everyone, for attending, and hope to see you next week.
Thanks. Bye.
That's all.